In Our Expert Opinion podcast is brought to you by Saunders Real Estate, a full-service land and commercial brokerage helping clients make bold and informed investment decisions since 1996.
Welcome back, everyone, to In Our Expert Opinion podcast. My name is Todd Dantzler, a little different voice than you're used to, I'm sure. Many of you may recognize me as one of the partners and managing directors of Saunders Real Estate, and also host of my very own podcast, aptly named Todd's Podcast. Joining us today is Stephen Callaham, the Chief Executive Officer of Dundee Citrus Growers Association. And throughout Stephen's career, he's been a champion of Florida citrus, the citrus industry, paying particular attention to the implementation of cups or citrus under protective screen, and that's what we're going to be talking about today. This strategy, hopefully, and has started to be a little bit of a game changer for many Florida farmers that are combating citrus screening and other challenges. And under Stephen's leadership, the Dundee Citrus Growers Association significantly expanded their cups acreage, thus demonstrating the promising results in the fruit quality and also in production numbers. Today, we'll do a little bit more of a deep dive into cups, the benefits of the program, and what it means for the future of citrus farming. So welcome, Stephen. I appreciate you coming in and taking some time today.
Yeah, thank you, Todd. It's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, this will be fun. So tell us a little bit about the cups program. Where does it come from? How did it come to fruition? And what do you think it's going to be meaning for the Florida citrus growers?
Yeah, back in 2014, myself and some of our colleagues started following the research that Dr. Arnold Schumann with the University of Florida Citrus Research and Education Center in Lake Alfred was doing. He had a 1 acre structure, a screen structure, wooden telephone poles, flat roof, flat sides, and his goal in his research was to exclude the Asian citrus psyllid, which is the insect that spreads citrus greening disease. And if he could do that with the screen and still grow trees profitably, grow the volume, grow the quality of the fruit that you needed to overcome the capital expense of putting that screen structure up, then it could be a way that citrus growers could live in a endemic greening environment. We followed that research. We're very, very pleased with the results that Dr. Schumann was getting after his first 2.5, 3 years. So we took it to a commercial level, breaking ground in 2017 on our first sizable project, which is about 110 acres under screen. And since that time, we've expanded almost every single year. And today, well, as of the spring of 25, we'll have just under 1,000 acres of cups of citrus under protective screen planted.
So the original structure that Dr. Schumann created, as I say his name correct, Dr.
Yes.
Schumann, you said it was about an acre. Did it resemble what you have today, or have y'all gone through several iterations of, hey, this worked, but let's try this works better, or what we did didn't work, his design was a little better?
You know, as a research project, he was running trials.
Okay.
You know, does 3 gallon pots, 5 gallon pots, 10 gallon pots, 15 gallon pots, does a certain rootstock, does a certain scion, a certain variety, how do all these things, a certain density per acre. So he was doing trials. So what we did is look at what was the most successful varieties, most successful manner of planting, the most successful density, and just hone in on what we wanted to take to a commercial level.
When he started, you just said that he had them in different size pots. Were they all potted trees? Did he build it over existing trees that were already planted that were maybe young, or is that part of his controlled environment, was everything's got to be in a pot so we can control that much more of the experiment?
Yeah, so first thing you do, first thing he did, first thing we do is you build your screen structure first, and then you take clean plant material from a nursery in. Some were in pots, some were in different size pots, some were actually planted in the ground. You know, what combination works the best to get the most fruit per acre, the highest quality fruit per acre, so that you could overcome that expense of the structure.
When he brought those trees in, were they from like a certified nursery? Is it like an organic that you had to have pretty clean plants before you brought them in because you didn't want to bring any contaminants in, right?
Well, in the Florida citrus industry right now, we all have to purchase our trees from a certified nursery,
Okay.
and those certified nurseries are also growing them in a controlled indoor
Right.
environment. No more growing open field container trees. So yes, they did come from that.
So how's the CUPS program assisted the growers, against these elements? I mean, you're kind of growing them in not an exact greenhouse, but in a greenhouse type environment. How has that helped the growers in their fight against diseases and the other elements that they face here in Florida?
Yeah, so the main purpose is to use a screen mesh, a size of a screen mesh that will exclude the Asian citrus psyllid. That's your primary goal, so that you do not get citrus greening. We know citrus greening is the biggest challenge as a Florida citrus grower we have ever faced,
Right.
in history. So exclude the psyllid, make sure your trees don't have citrus greening, but you're not able to exclude everything. If you made the mesh so tight or made it a solid piece,
Right.
you're not allowing the sunlight to get in at the same level. You're not allowing the rain to get in at the same level. You're not allowing for some of the wind exchange, to take place. So I think you're just trying to exclude the psyllid, and then there's other pests, diseases, insects, and things that you still have to contend with. But we know prior to citrus greening, citrus growers could profitably grow citrus. So that's what we're trying to get back to.
I know, as we've talked a couple of times a year or so ago about another project, and even in preparation for today, there's some stuff that we can't really talk about that's proprietary to your company and what you're doing. But I do think there's really some interesting parts of this program that I'd like to talk about. The growing, the planting, the care maintenance, the harvesting, it's a controlled environment, which I think is so significant. And so what are there's some inherent advantages. Can you tell us why it's so much more controlled other than you just keep the wind out or the psyllids out through the breeze?
Yeah, I mean, you're keeping the psyllids out. You also are providing a better quality light. When the sun hits the screen, it disperses the light, so you have less shading inside that structure. Even though the screen provides a certain percentage of shade, it helps distribute that light so that the tree grows faster. It photosynthesizes at a more rapid rate. So, we're seeing these trees grow 2.5 times faster. That's some of the research that Dr. Arnold Schumann approved from his cup structure. So it's a very, very happy environment, as we say in our company, for the trees to grow in. You can tell they just grow faster. They produce more. It's a good environment for them.
More, faster, quicker, stronger should reflect into return on the investment.
It should, but it's a big investment to put the structures up.
Right.
So you have to produce a lot more fruit. You have to produce higher quality fruit in order to overcome that and make a good return.
So there's got to be some type of specialized equipment. You go out into an open grove, they've got these hedgers, they've got 30-foot ladders for the folks who are harvesting, wider middles because the trucks, the goats take bigger turns. What kind of equipment did you design some yourself? Did you bring engineers come in, or how do you change around your practices for caretaking and harvesting?
Yeah, and it's totally different than how we handle things on outdoor traditional groves. Smaller, narrow, vineyard-type tractors,
Okay.
Custom or modified sprayers, custom or modified herbicide units. On the harvesting side, instead of using a large truck, a goat to do it,
Right.
we're using small articulating mini loaders to move the bins in and out of the screen structure for the harvesting side. As far as ladders, we don't use ladders. We're using a dwarfing rootstock. You want to grow a smaller tree because you have a structure to contend
Right.
with. So our trees so far have not grown to a height that would require a ladder.
So you're thinking a 8 foot tree might be a fully mature tree
Well, I guess
somewhere in that area?
well,
I mean, if you don't need ladders.
it's a little more complicated than that. You'll see in the springtime, your trees will reach 10 or 12 feet tall, and then they bloom, and then they set such a heavy crop because
Right.
they're such a healthy tree that that heavy crop
Pulls it.
pulls the tree down to 6, 7, 8 feet, something that you can reach up, a normal person could without a ladder and harvest that fruit. So that's
Which
the
is
case.
safer for the harvesters as well.
It's safer
know,
for the harvesters.
everybody.
It's more efficient for them not to have the ladder, not having to climb a ladder with a heavy, harvesting sack, a pick sack. It's an advantage.
Harvesters have to be much happier.
They are happier.
And if everything seems to be a little more compact, then obviously your equipment obviously is much smaller. And can you buy any of this stuff off the rack? Do you go to where they have other types of fruit crops and say, hey, this will work in our citrus grows? They're doing these for grapes out west. We can do that here. You still seems like you have to modify it somehow, some way for it to work.
For the tractors or the ATVs or something like that, you can buy them locally, or at least order them locally
Right.
through a John Deere or Kubota or somebody like that. Bobcat, we use some of those. So you can find that equipment. As far as the sprayers and the herbiciders, those are modified equipment that you would use in a regular grow, or they're complete custom units that we've had specifically built, for cups.
Is that equipment more expensive? Do you have like local folks design it, or are you like every entrepreneur? You say, hey, we're out in the field, we need this arm to do this, or we need this blade to do that, and you just go back to the shop and say, hey, let's fabricate something.
A lot of that has taken place. Custom fabricated equipment. You have to have more equipment. You're planting the trees at a higher density. There's 2 to 3 times as many rows of trees per acre. So if you think about it, you need more equipment to actually travel those rows in the same amount of time as you would normally need to cover it. So it does take more equipment. Cost-wise, it's typically a little less per unit because you're using smaller, lower horsepower, narrower, type equipment. So it's less money per piece, but it's taking more pieces of equipment.
With a smaller tree, your spacing should be able to be smaller. Is that something you can talk about? I mean, if you're looking at a 10, 12-foot tree, you're not talking about a 30-foot tree. And that's how you kind of get some of your density per acre, I'm assuming.
It is, and we're over 300 trees per acre on all of our
Okay.
plantings. So it's about double what you would
Right.
think historically per acre would be.
Does the variety matter on your spacing? I mean, again, you're experimenting like everybody else, and have y'all found that different varieties still respond differently, or you're able to control so much more of the growing process that you can kind of control and with some of those spacings and other practices?
Yeah, so variety does make a difference. Some of the varieties that we're growing are more of an upright, taller type varieties. Some are a more sprawling, globose type shaped tree. So it does make a difference. But I think we're doing something on a commercial level that has never been done in citrus, in Florida citrus. So we're learning as we go to try to refine what that spacing needs to be, what the density needs to be, what's the best root stock to use inside of those, and ultimately find the best varieties that'll grow in that environment.
I think you said y'all started about 17 when you first got involved in the program. Do you think most of the experimentation is over, or do you think every year we're going to plant X number of acres or put a certain number in just to have another variety to see how it does, or another root stock? Are you continually experimenting, or are you pretty satisfied with where at least your program is?
Yep. So every time we developed a new phase of cups, we made improvements. We learned from what we have done so far.
Right.
We try to improve upon it in the future. But as far as experimentation, we are constructing a dedicated variety trial cups pod. That pod is going to have dozens of citrus varieties in there, from acid fruits to mandarins, tangerines, specialty citrus, grapefruit, every type of orange you can think of, new varieties, old varieties that you and I knew as a kid
Right.
growing up with. You have to grow them in that environment, find out, first of all, will they produce the quantity of fruit you need? Will it be the quality of fruit that you need to really overcome that expense? So that is an ongoing project. We do need to figure out what other varieties will grow in that environment.
Is the University of Florida still working hand in hand with y'all, or have y'all kind of cut ties, or is Dr. Schumann still in the groves with? I'm not sure if he's even still alive. Hopefully he is.
Oh yeah, yep, still alive.
Okay.
He's still our go-to resource. I mean, in our minds, he's the godfather of
Right.
of cups, and we rely on him heavily. He comes to our farms, looks at our trees, meets with our management, our caretaking, production staff, and really is a great resource for us and continues to be. And it's not just Dr. Schumann.
Right.
I mean, we have a tremendous amount of cooperation and interaction with the University of Florida Citrus Research Center in Lake Alfred and beyond, even from Gainesville, from the Indian River Research Facility. It's been good support for us.
Were y'all the first real commercial user, experimenter with the cups program, guinea pig, whatever the word may be? Did they try it in different places, or say, hey, let us try it first? We'll take the hit first and see if we can at least make it potentially viable.
Yeah, there was another group in the state that also started, in a similar time frame as we started on a commercial level. I think that both of those groups have continued to add acreage year in and year out, but it's still a pretty small group. There was a lot of risk. This is something new, and it can be expensive to install and construct. So I think controlled growth is the best way to look at it.
Do you have a program? Again, I don't want to get into your proprietary information. You said you started off with about 100, 110 acres, and you're up to around 1,000. Have y'all kind of said, hey, we'd like to try and put 10% more every year? Or are you looking to identify the site? And if the site happens to be 40 acres or 20 or 70, you're going to adjust to whatever the site may offer?
I would say that we're always looking for where that next project, where that next site would be, the next variety that we need to put in, to a commercial level, going from a trial experimental type situation. So we do continue to look for that on an ongoing basis.
If I was an individual grower and had 10, 15, 20 acres, is the CUPS program something I could take advantage of? Do I need to be bigger than that to recognize those economies of scale? Because, I mean, if I have to have new equipment, specialized equipment, you guys are now up to 1,000 acres, a much larger company than me with my small 110-acre block. Could I make it work?
So, in my opinion, it's going to be very, very challenging to have a small acreage like that. You'll see in Polk County, you'll have a grower that has 100 acres of traditional type outdoor grove, and
Right.
maybe a 10-acre block within that 100 acres is dying for whatever reason, most likely citrus screening, and they want to look at putting a cup structure up on that 10 acres. That, in our opinion, will not work well. You don't want to put it in close proximity right next to an outdoor grove that's going to have psyllids in it. You don't want to use personnel. You don't want to use equipment. You don't want to use anything that you're currently using in your outdoor groves. You don't want to cross-contaminate. So what our cooperative did, our company is a cooperative, is we purchased larger tracts of land, and then our members were able to join in and take a piece of that overall development, really, like a cooperative would do. And then we could utilize, the economies of scale and personnel and equipment from harvesting, everything at that one location, and it has worked very well.
It seems like it would, and I think you just confirmed, to be very challenging for a small operator to try and make this work, you really have to be part of a large organization with so many more resources than just me with 10 or 15 acres and hire and a company to, do the caretaking, then hire another company to do pick and haul. And, hopefully at the end of the year, you got a few more dollars in the plus column than the other side. And, but it sounds like it's kind of a viable alternative that may be still in the infancy.
It is. It's in the infancy. I think that you'll continue to see it expand, but again, a lot of the grove that is currently in place is going away. It's turning into houses, to rooftops, and
Right.
and other uses. So I don't think that you're going to see cups grow rapidly. I think it's going to be controlled. I could see the industry adding a few hundred acres a year moving forward, but I don't think you're going to see 5,000 acres, 10,000 acres of cups anytime soon.
I would assume that the return would have to dictate how fast it does, and as everybody's experimenting, that will come about. Again, for me, looking at this, it seems like the biggest thing is you can control the environment, from planting to caretaking to harvesting to watering to everything. And it sounds like cup is certainly a way to accomplish it. Not necessarily, it's not the be all end all, correct?
Correct. No, I think there's other methods. I mean, we're very aggressive with cups, but our members still have more acres of outdoor traditional type grows
Right.
than they do cups, and we're we feel strongly about both directions.
Are there lessons you can share with us of stuff that you've learned, whether it's rootstock or varieties, soil types? I mean, I would assume, just like every other piece of citrus, some do better in sandy soils, some varieties do better be embedded, some have more water tolerance with a lower root ball. Are you finding that same thing true?
Definitely. So Florida, we're a subtropical climate. We know how citrus grows in subtropical climates. When you put up a cup structure, you're creating a tropical climate. So you're going to have higher temperatures, higher humidity, and certain varieties don't do well in that environment, and some do. So I think, that's probably one of the bigger challenges we have now, is trying to figure out what other varieties that we can plant in there.
Is there a group of the different folks that are in the CUPS program? I just thought of this, that are participating, and I don't know how many other organizations there are, but do y'all get together and say, hey, we planted this variety on this and this soil, this is working well for us, it's not, maybe you should try something else? Do y'all collaborate with other CUPS program users, utilizers, whatever? Sorry if I'm misstating that.
Yeah, there's definitely been some collaboration.
Good.
I think in the earlier years, in the 2017, 18, and 19, folks were keeping their information very close to their chest.
Yeah.
I mean, you're spending a lot of money, you're taking a lot of risk to try to figure this out,
Right.
and that you start figuring things out, you tend to want to keep that information close.
Is the state participating on you may not want to answer this may be a political answer, but are they participating at a level that seems to be satisfactory with where the industry is? You can never have enough assistance, I would think, especially in experimental programs, but are they good partners in this for y'all?
Absolutely. They've been good partners, and from a state perspective, agriculture perspective, Commissioner Wilton Simpson is a huge supporter of our industry, and a huge supporter of CUPS. I mean, he believes that that is one of the ways that the Florida citrus industry can thrive in the future. So we've always worked closely with the state, various cost share programs that they've offered, low cost, no interest type loans during disaster situations. So it's been a good relationship with the state. Marketing efforts, we depend heavily on them.
You mentioned marketing. You're growing your fruit. I would assume the quality is superior than if you're just growing out in the elements. Do you kind of tend to think we're going to be more on the fresh fruit side or the juice side, or are you leading more on the fresh fruit side? Maybe juice will catch up to you once you get a certain number of acres.
Yes,
Because an orange is very expensive at Publix these days.
well, oranges, tangerines,
Everything
grapefruit,
is-
everything is expensive. So, historically, fresh fruit prices have been higher than juice fruit prices. So the initial focus was completely on fresh fruit to try to capture that higher return to overcome the cost that you put in it. But, as you've seen, Todd, juice fruit prices have gone up tremendously as the volume and the availability of that fruit has gone down. So it's not out of the question. I think that if we can figure out, what juice fruit variety can grow enough quality boxes and cups, it's absolutely a consideration.
And when we talked before, we talked about the quality of the exterior of the fruit. You're not getting the wind scar. The oranges aren't, the fruit's not being beat around in the weather against other leaves. I would think that would lend itself and tend to be more of a fresh fruit appealing type product at the market right now.
Yeah, it's definitely less wind scar. You're blocking a majority of the wind out. The structures still breathe, but you are reducing the wind scar tremendously. The fruit that we're producing in cups, when people look at it, they think it's something we produced in a arid Mediterranean type climate because it's
Right.
it's aesthetically it's very, very attractive, and it tastes great too.
How have the structures held up in the weather? You've had some out since 17. We've had a number of hurricanes. How do they take? How well do they take the beating of the Florida environment?
Well, we've had our fill of hurricanes, and we don't want
I
any
hope we're
more.
full of them too.
I hope we are. It's it's been a challenge for us. I mean, you think about it. We started taking this commercial in 2017, and we had Hurricane Irma, a very powerful storm that came across our area. And then again in 2022, Hurricane Ian, we got beat up. And then you have a lot of the Hurricane Milton in 2024. And then you can start filling in with the Helenes and the Debbies and the Idalias.
All the others.
All the others. Yeah. So it's been back to back to back. I'm hoping that whatever that cycle or that trend is, we're done with. I mean, the structures, our structures are engineered very, very well. They're very, very strong structures. But when you have a Category 2 direct impact from a hurricane, you're going to have screen damage. So that's been something that we've had to contend with. After each hurricane, you have to repair screen. Of course, the older the screen is, the longer it's on the structure, the more UV continues to degrade it over time. So you'll see the oldest structures suffer the most damage from a hurricane. The newer structures with new screen on them, they've withstood Category 2 hurricanes without any screen damage.
Are the screens the primary portion of the structure that is damaged?
Yes.
I mean, everything else is metal, steel, secured better.
Yeah, exactly. That's really the item that you're going to have damage in, and that you're going to have to replace over time, even if you don't have a hurricane. It's screen. It's like your pool cage.
Have the screens evolved since the program started? Have the engineers, have the entrepreneurs, have the inventors said, hey, this screen, not just for structural soundness, but for quality of letting the appropriate amount of light in or wind or whatever, does that continue to evolve, or is that really up to the grower who says, well, I got to let more wind in, so I open up another vent?
They have evolved. The original screens Dr. Schumann used in his research were a tighter screen, especially on the roof. And, you can only go so wide of a opening on your screen before you let the psyllid inside. So you have to be very, very careful. I think
that's the whole purpose of the program, is to keep the psyllids out.
That's it. So you're very limited on what you can do as far as your structure and some of the things that you can do. Every time we do a new phase, we try to make improvements that will, prolong the life of the screens. So we continue to make those enhancements, trying to improve the durability, trying to, improve the life of the screens.
Have the folks that are participating with you, the investors, the growers, other folks around, are they pretty encouraged by the results so far? Are they saying, hey, this is not the savior, but this could be a method to help us along the way? They're kind of encouraged by the results of the program so far?
Yes, they are encouraged. Again, if you could take 3 or 4 hurricanes out of the mix, I think they would be extremely pleased.
How about regulations for growing? Are there any type of regulations that are different for growing within a structure than without, just because of how the chemicals may be dispersed or whatever?
Yeah, I think if you had a closed structure, you would definitely have different regulations to comply with. But the air movement
Still
through there, the sun, everything is the same.
How about paperwork? This just came to me. Is there a lot of paperwork because you're still in the experimental phase, where part of it I would think is the data to help the analysts do the research, but are there more paperwork, more hoops to jump through to get this funding from the different government agencies?
As far as experimental stage, with our 1,000 acres, I think we're really beyond the experimental stage as far as cups as a way to grow citrus.
Okay.
Our experimental phase would be more experimenting with what varieties would work, or is there any improvements or enhancements that we can make to how we're currently doing it. Paperwork side, anytime you deal with the government, there's a lot of paperwork, but it's
not onerous yet.
No, not, and it's really not any different than an outside traditional grower would face.
Is there a type of land that you're looking for? Are y'all experimenting different regions of the state? We talked a little bit, some coasts are on beds, higher water table. They might experience more wind damage from hurricanes than we enjoy here in the middle of the state. It sounds like everything's so experimental, but is there anything that you're kind of satisfied with, or saying, we've got enough here, we don't need to get too far away from our core?
It's always beneficial to be as close to your core as you can. Right. Transportation, trying to, keep that at a minimal cost. But we feel like it's limited for us on the ridge in Florida. It's going to be a higher elevation, the furthest you can be away from the coast, very well drained soils.
And that's us.
That's us. That's right. Where we are. Your Polk County, your Highlands County, that's where we have our current operations. And I think, Lake County would be fine as well. But, you start looking at, the most reasonable cost for citrus land. And it's citrus land that you're after. If you can find a grove that's no longer in production because of whatever reason, citrus greening disease, there's a reason that was a grove to begin with. It was well suited for citrus. So I think that's the best candidate when you go to looking for it.
Have y'all measured, and again, I didn't ask you this before, if it's industry secret, that's fine, but have you measured how much less water you have to utilize versus if it's outside? I mean, it's got to be, the conservationists have got to be happy with this program, saying, hey, you're using 20% of the water you'd normally use, or whatever it may be.
Yeah. So what happens is you're producing so much more fruit per acre, and you're doing it with the same amount of water, fertilizer, as you would be applying per acre on a traditional grove, but you're producing, 6, 8, 10 times more fruit. Yeah. So when you start looking at it, you're producing more with less. You're using less land, less water, less fertilizer, less inputs per piece, per box of fruit. And it's a tremendous savings and as far as that's concerned.
And I think people need to understand that is it's all based on the yield. Is how much fruit are you getting off of that tree? And if you can get more fruit from that tree, same amount of cost to produce it, you're making more money, or you're making money again, and that's what's so important. If we're kind of wrapping up here, but if I'm a small grower and I want to find out more about the CUPS program or Dundee's program, how would we go about doing that? Are y'all looking for investors, or you got enough now? But how would I find out more about the CUPS program?
You would call me. I'd be happy to speak to anyone about CUPS, and so I would be the one.
So tell us a little bit about the Dundee Citrus Growers Association. You're not a brand new organization. You've got a great history of being here in Florida, wonderful families, wonderful members, and we all know members and we all know family members. So tell us a little bit about, give us a commercial on Dundee Citrus Growers, what y'all do.
Yeah, so Dundee Citrus Growers was established in 1924. So we're excited to just have completed our 100th year in business, our centennial celebration.
That's amazing.
This past year, and we have a great outlook on the future, especially with our citrus under protective screen. We handle the harvesting, packaging, and marketing for our growers' fruit, and then when it comes to cups, we also handle the care and the production of those crops. So that's what we do. We're a fully vertically integrated company, turnkey. Whether you're an investor or a citrus grower or just somebody in agriculture that wants to get involved, we can handle all those aspects.
Have you always been a co-op?
Always been a co-op.
So if I don't own any groves, but I say, hey, I've got some money I'd like to invest, could I invest in the Dundee CGA and hopefully get a return and be part of it? Or do you have to be an actual grower owner to be a member of your co-op?
Yeah, you have to be a grower to be a member of the co-op. It doesn't mean that you have to be, a grower that's handling the growing yourself. You can buy a cup spot, and that cup spot is signed up in membership with our cooperative. Then you're a grower. You're a member.
So we're kind of wrapped up now. I appreciate you at least telling us a little bit about the program and what you can tell us. It sounds like it may not be the savior for the citrus industry, but it's certainly a step in the right direction. And as companies that are aggressive like you go out and get innovative, you start bringing those solutions to the table, and more folks will get in, and hopefully we can at least sustain this till we start finding some long-term solutions to the problems that the industry is facing, because it is changing, and it sometimes it's probably hard to get out of bed, even though you get up at 4:30 in the morning and say, what is facing me today? So appreciate that. But so DundeeCGA.com, is that what the website would be, or how do they find you?
Yeah, DUN-D.com, where they can call the main office, look us up, and they can reach me.
Located in downtown Dundee.
Located in the big booming metropolis of Dundee, Florida.
Dundee not know what's going to hit them when all these houses come in down there. So I wish them
changing.
Stephen, thank you for coming in. I really appreciate it. You've been a great guest. You've been very open with the information, and I do appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. Thank you, Todd, for having me today.
Yeah, and for you folks that are tuning in, thank you for listening to me. It's my first time hosting in our expert opinion. It's been a lot of fun. If you want to hear from me, be sure to check back in on my podcast called Todd's Podcast. You can find it wherever you get your podcasts, or at todddantzler.com. That's TODDANTZLER.com. Take care, everyone. Thank you, Stephen. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to In Our Expert Opinion Real Estate Podcast. Don't forget to subscribe on your favorite podcast app so you never miss any of our upcoming episodes. For more on land and commercial real estate, please connect with us at SaundersRealEstate.com.